Are you new to playing in trading card games or competitive trading card games? I have been there, and I know that going to your first event or tournament might be a stressful situation. And I'm talking from a store event all the way up to a 5K Grand Prix or at some point even a pro tour. Everything has a sort of beginning point, and we all have been there. So I'm going to kind of give you guys kind of an idea of how I not prep for a tournament, but like, what do I do when I'm getting ready to play? What are some of the social norms that I do to get myself ready in terms of my play mat, how I'm going to organize my cards and my stuff, so that way I am comfortable to play and present my deck to my opponent. So the first thing I have is I've got my play mat. So I always roll out my play mat right in front of me. I don't know why I always do this, kind of level it out. You don't have to have a playmat when you're playing trading card games, but I enjoy having one. One, it defines my playing area, so I know where I'm going to be on the battlefield or whatever. And it also gives a little bit of representation of your personality or maybe something that you enjoy. So yeah, so I have a whole collection of playmats. This is the one I'm using right now. I recommend getting yourself some sort of deck box. Now, you don't have to get a special blinged out deck box. I have this one. This is actually not my favorite deck box that I've used. I can't find my favorite one, which is called the Dragon Egg. It's I don't even know if it's available anymore. It's a long time ago. I used to use it when I played Magic the Gathering. But you want something effectively that is going to store your cards available to you, so you have access to different types of things, as well as your tokens. So that's effectively what this deck box does. It allows me to store my decks, as well as any tokens or anything I need. Up here are cards that I have from my last event that I won or went to. I recommend never keeping cards when you're going to an event inside your deck box. You want to make sure your deck box is only cards that you're playing in that event. And for the most part, I would also bring only the deck that you're bringing in that event. Okay, so what I have here is my deck. So we're going to go and pull it out. Now I have a divider here. The divider breaks apart my sideboard, or side deck as some people like to call it, from my main deck. So I like to pull this off, pull my sideboard aside, put it to the side for now, and place my deck out. Over here I have my tokens. I'm going to pull out both of my token boxes because they're going to have things I'm going to need for the game. Close this up, and I will no longer need this. Now, depending on space allowed in the tournament area, I like to try to find a place to tuck it along the side without encroaching on the people sitting next to me. Depending on where you're at, you might have to have your backpack or something and have to place this underneath your chair, underneath your backpack. If you do that, by the way, I highly recommend, if you bring a backpack with you to a gaming event and you're carrying cards with you or your deck boxes, I highly recommend putting your leg, this is for major events, by the way, not such a concern for local events, put one leg through underneath and then place it underneath your chair. That way, if someone tries to grab or sneak away your backpack, it'll catch on your leg. I've been to many different types of pro events back in the Magic the Gathering days, like Grand Prix and whatnot. And the amount of stuff that got stolen while people were playing because they're focused on the gameplay and having their backpack stolen from underneath them is astounding. So protect yourself. Do the little things like keeping a leg inside that your backpack strap. Just protect yourself. But let's continue on setup. So I have my deck here. In Star Wars Unlimited, you have your base and your leader. So I'm going to place those immediately up in front of me. My opponent at this point will know, roughly what I'm going to be playing, and then I'll have my deck. There are two different ways that I prefer to shuffle, and this is kind of an old school style of shuffling that I've just been doing for years. The first one is a pile shuffle where I'll do 4 piles and 3 piles, and I'll just kind of place cards down in this manner until I've gone through the entire deck. I don't necessarily know if this is the best method for shuffling a deck, but it is a way that I have grown accustomed to doing, and it's how I shuffle pretty much everything I do now. It's just part of, how I play. Now, I kind of grab piles randomly. Doesn't really matter how you're going to grab them in whatever way you want. And then I'm going to go ahead and do what's called a shotgun shuffle. So to do a shotgun shuffle, I grab the deck with one hand. I align everything so it's clean. I kind of grab a section of the deck with one hand, and I kind of push. Whoop, it's course kind of hard when you're doing filming. And I kind of push it in like that. And you just kind of do something similar to this. A few different shotgun shuffles while pulling the top side of the deck, shuffling it back into the middle of the deck. You can do this about 6 or so times to get a good randomization. Always kind of grabbing cards and shuffling them back in. After that, you're going to present your deck to your opponent. I like to present on the right. Usually my opponent will present on my left, their right. And you're going to then have the opportunity to cut your deck. If your opponent presents their deck to you, there are 2 things you can do. You can do a standard cut where you just take their cards, cut them, and present it back to your opponent. You are within your rights, though, to grab your opponent's deck and do a little shotgun shuffle. But if you do something like this, please make sure you keep your gaze away from your deck. There have been instances of people trying to catch a peek of the bottom card, seeing maybe what's some in there, what cards your opponent might have, or maybe trying to place certain cards in certain sections of their deck. So if you're ever going to touch your opponent's deck, make sure you give them the courtesy and just look away as you do these shuffles. That way you can guarantee that you are not attempting to do anything cheesy or cheaty or anything. Then you can present your deck back to your opponent. There can be situations where your opponent, taps your deck when you're presenting it. Basically, that means that they are okay with what you presented and they're not asking to shuffle. That's fine. You can then take your deck and place it where you want to be. I will say, though, if your opponent does this, there are times where that means you might have the social feeling that you also should do the same to your opponents. Never feel like you're obligated to tap your opponent's deck in response to them doing the same to you. That can be a way for them to manipulate their deck in some way. And to prevent any type of cheating, I always like to give my opponent a little cut, just, for sakes of the gameplay. After that, you're going to place your deck in a comfortable position for you to draw from. A lot of the pre-built Star Wars Unlimited placemats have the deck down here and the discard down here. That's very, very uncomfortable for me. So I like to place my deck way up here in the top right corner, and then I will draw from that. So I usually take 3 cards and then 3 cards to show 6. And I like to have it so my opponent can see that I'm doing those cards before I take them into my hand. From there, we are going to resource. Oh, look at that kind of shuffle. That's a wild shuffle. All of my making openings there. At some point, we're then going to resource, so we'll just go ahead and resource, say, these 2 cards, whatever it is, and I place them face down in front of me. The important thing to note, as the game is progressing, we're going through the gameplay, resourcing your cards and placing your resources. Please practice getting used to placing your resources in a manner that is easy for your opponent to see what you're playing, and also easy for you to recognize at a glance how many resources you have available. I see a lot of people kind of making these stack piles like this. It's very hard to know what the heck's going on, one for your opponent, but for you as well to know how many resources you've tapped and what's going on. So I like to do 2 stacks like this. Sometimes I'll do 3 stacks depending on how many resources I've gotten up to, and then I'll tap my resources like that to indicate that they're being used for my opponent's sake as well as mine. I think it's clean. It makes it very easy to see what's going on. I've also seen people do these long singular rows. It just can get unwieldy when you have too much stuff. So just practice putting the stacks like this so that way your resources are easily managed. When I draw cards, I usually just take them like this into my hand, one at a time. I don't like when people palm draw. I think palm drawing is a bad habit to get into, so I wouldn't even get involved in doing something like that. In terms of scorekeeping, Star Wars Unlimited, like life keeping, Star Wars Unlimited has these tokens that you're going to place. I've got these acrylic tokens online, which you can reflect the damage. But what I like to do is I use a score pad here to keep track of my health as well as my opponent's health. So I usually write down, me, I've got a 30-point base. I'm not going to write down anything for them right now because I'm not playing it against anyone. And then I will then track 1 damage, 2 damage, 5 damage, 7 damage. That way I've got a running tally of what's going on here. And I also keep track of what I've been doing to my opponent's health. The reason I started doing this, I did this in Magic the Gathering pretty religiously. I don't think I've ever used dice or anything to track health. But the reason I went back to doing this for this is, one, if there's any type of discrepancy between the life totals, you can easily go back to a written tracking of damage dealt and seeing how the damage might have been received. and I feel like there's a better chance of accuracy from a score pad than not. I've also found that my opponents like to do different types of ways of tracking their health, and I like having a uniform way to make sure I know what's going on at a quick glance of how much the health they have remaining or how much health I've dealt to them. The other thing I do, though, for the sake of the game as well as it's required, is I will always make sure that I'm updating my health total on my base as well as my minions for my opponents so they're aware. The other thing is initiative tokens. Initiative tokens seem to be kind of an interesting gameplay situation. I've seen people grab people's tokens and use them when they have initiative. What I like to do is have my initiative token. When I do not have initiative, I flip it over to a blank side, and when I have initiative, I put it back to the bright side. I have a few different initiative tokens that I technically can use. They all have somewhat similar effects. Depending on my mood or whatever I'm going to do, I can use these tokens in that manner. So I've got those 3 tokens. This gold and white one is technically my primary initiative token, but whatever my mood is, I have that. To the side here, I will keep a pair of dice. I use these dice for rolling for initiative. I'll keep those in one of my deck boxes, and I usually will place my deck boxes to the side with the one that has my damage counters closer to myself. That way I can have an easy time playing and reaching for the tokens that I need, and I'll have my score pad here on the right. When things go to my graveyard, I'll usually place them like this in an easy way to remember where they're at. The only thing I will say in terms of the complaints of the space is Star Wars Unlimited wants a direct side for over here for one side of the arena, as well as a side over here for the arena. Placing your deck at the top like I do does limit the space in this arena. I haven't really had it be an issue, but it can be an issue for some people. The last step in terms of getting ready for an event is understanding how a sideboard works and whatnot. Your sideboard are the separate cards that you bring to the event to change your deck up for games 2 and 3 for matchups that you might need some help with. So I have my sideboard here, and I might come in here and be like, okay, you know what, I'm going to need some of these cards. And I don't place these face up. I'll place them side down. And there's a few ways I'll do it. If I'm playing in a casual tournament, I might just do like this. I've got 5 cards coming in, and then I need to go through my deck and make sure I've got, around 5 cards coming out. So I'm going to have to do that. I'm going to have these cards coming out. If you are super competitive and you don't want to risk having your opponents get any type of sleight of hand on you or getting kind of an advantage, you are more than welcome to take your entire sideboard and shuffle those cards into your deck, and then come back and take out 10 cards from your deck, including some of the ones from your sideboard if you wanted to. That way your opponent doesn't know if you sideboarded anything at all or you sideboarded how much, whatever. So that's something to be aware of if you want to really game the game and try to give your opponent as little information as possible. I have done that once or twice in my past in Magic the Gathering. I didn't find it was that helpful. I no longer do that. I like to personally look at my sideboard, place down cards I definitely want, place down some cards that maybe I'm thinking about. My opponent doesn't know what I'm doing. They don't know why I've got a 3 pile here, a 2 pile here, and a 2 pile here, and then these cards over here. But in my head, I know I've got 3 here that I really want, and these are situational depending on how I feel. Now, the best thing you could do if you're really, really wanting to be advantaged in these kind of sideboarding matchups is have your sideboards predetermined ahead of the event, knowing that you're going to be playing against potentially different types of decks. Be like, okay, if I'm playing against the Sabine deck, these cards come in, these cards come out. That's the best way to prepare for an event. I haven't done that yet in Star Wars Unlimited. I haven't really felt the need to get to that level. But that's something I have done in the past where you have a sideboarding plan prior to going to an event. So that is kind of the rough of how I get myself prepared for playing an event and how I do my playmats and how I get ready to play and whatnot for Star Wars Unlimited. I'm going to do a little bit of bonus content because I've had someone ask me this question, so we're going to do a little bit of bonus content here for you guys. And that is in terms of how I store my rare cards. I've shown in the past how I store my uncommons and commons, and my rares are kind of similar but not totally similar. So what I have here is a binder of all of my rares and legendaries for the most part. There are obviously some of the leaders are common, but in the front here I have the leaders. Now originally I was keeping all the leaders until you start realizing you start getting a lot of leader fluff. So I'm probably going to trim these down, and I started to only keep hyperspace versions now of leaders. Eventually I'll have only hyperspace versions of all these leaders going forward. So after that, we've got some blank pages. These are for future sets with more leaders. I tried my best to future plan, but I know I'm going to have to adjust this going forward. So then I have it broke down by section. So I'll have, you know, generic cards and going either I've got my villainy, I've got my heroic, general cards, villainy, heroic. So that's kind of the way going down, I do my cards. But the thing I like to do here as well is here I'm going to pull out Bail Organa. If I'm playing a deck with Bail Organa, I have here, and I can also pull out this penny sleeve, which contains all the cards. And inside there, I actually have all the cards of Bail Organa in my collection. I grab what I need, put the rest back in the penny sleeve, and slide it back into its position. I really like this penny sleeve method that I've kind of come up with because it makes it easy to pull the cards that I need out, keeps them protected, and also helps me slide things in easier and keep things organized as well. If I have different variations of a card, such as hyperspace or foil, I'll usually put either the hyperspace or the foil at the front, depending on my mood. Lately, I've been placing hyperspaces at the front because I enjoy them a little bit more than foils, you know, all things considered. But I'll usually have my special cards near the front and then the regular basic ones near the back. There's no order right now in terms of why something goes where. Like up here, this is where my Vader was. But there's no organization in terms of alphabetizing. I just do it by villainy, heroic. I will have to expand this, but I have plenty of room here for more cards and keep expanding. And eventually I'll just purchase more of these binders for additional sets. At some point, maybe I'll find a different solution for the leaders as we get more leaders down the line. Same thing for, say, the bases. You know, maybe we'll figure out a different solution for these bases. And as well for these bases, I was only keeping the hyperspace versions unless they are the rare bases. At that point, I was keeping all versions because it's rare. And you'll see that some of these are common cards, but these are also the cards that were from their starter special cards. These are technically the hyperspace versions, but these were only found originally in the 2-player deck. So I was also keeping them in here in case I wanted to build them, but they technically could also go into my commons box from there. So yeah, that's my organization, how I organize my cards and get them ready for deck building purposes. It makes it easy for me to find anything I'm technically looking for while playing this game of Star Wars Unlimited. So thank you guys for watching. I got to go ahead and put these cards where they go, get them organized back in. Those are some of my pulls from the last event I went to. So that's about it, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this. My name is Brian. You're watching Game Brigade. I didn't include that in the front for some reason. But I appreciate you guys for watching. Thank you again. If you're new here, remember to subscribe, and I will talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.